Today's event is with Laura Eisenhower, and the title is Upgrading in the Face of Adversity. And I'm going to do a shorter version of a bio here, and Laura can go into more depth if she wants to, but I'm sure a lot of you, if not all of you already, are pretty familiar with Laura. She has been able to uncover some necessary truths and agendas that humanity is being kept in the dark about, and lectures and does workshops on these issues, along with topics such as global alchemy, Christ Sophia, sacred union, ET races, esoteric cosmology, the positive timeline, and seeks to empower the individual so that harmony can be restored. For more than 15 years, Laura Eisenhower has been providing clairvoyant readings, transformative healings for individuals with the assistance of many divination tools and astrology. Focusing on chakra systems, Laura has advised on topics such as soul path, abduction, mind control, core issues, relationships, past lives, and physical ailments. She has been strategizing to solve the roots of major world problems, including epidemics, war, environmental degradation, and injustices that have been a result of the misuses of power of the shadow government. She also covers hidden agendas connected to ET races and the exile of the divine feminine energies. And we've had Laura many times on Portal Ascension. Many of you have probably seen her before. So now, with all the energy and what's going on right now, this event is for, is really relevant for us upgrading right now in the face of adversity. So hi, Laura. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Neil. Thanks for having me. Hi, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well in these definitely crazy times. And I have a little presentation, and some of the slides are slides that I've shared before, but I'm kind of putting it in the context of the here and now, because a lot of the stuff I've been sharing over the years is still relevant. And it's just really important to remind ourselves of, what's available outside of kind of what we're seeing as far as the matrix programs and fear tactics, false narratives, and all that kind of stuff. And, a lot are already aware of all this. And so what's interesting is a lot of my presentations over the years have been about preparing people for the possibility of a period of time where New World Order and these dark agendas would have a major, grip on humanity, that, we would inevitably have to move through this particular layer to get to the other side, because obviously, it's not just going to switch off and just go away. It's a part of a greater initiation to move through these energies and become the override frequency, so that we can have seniority over these darker entities and agendas. And so I'm going to, get into that, but I'm going to do a share screen here and just tell you a little bit more about how I pulled together the information that I am sharing over the years. And really, the main source of information that I've received throughout my life has just been life experience, and really paying attention to, the stuff that has just taken place in my own personal world. I think paying attention to what our life experience has to show us is a greater education than anything we can get in the school systems, because it's a part of such a larger picture on a soul level to, observe, ourselves and be on that quest of a greater self-discovery, so that we can be more co-creative and less at the mercy of the things that are coming at us, so that, we can move beyond negative patterning, ancestral patterns, and things that, kind of keep us in this holographic time loop and unable to kind of move to, the next level. And this is what the whole concept of ascension is really about: human advancement, awakening dormant DNA, being in a truth frequency, and recognizing what's happening on an earthly and cosmic level, so that we can stand in alignment to these upgrades that involve us going through a lot of initiations. And the thing with initiations is they often get hijacked. When we're vulnerable or fear gets ignited, it's very easy for us to want to give our power away instead of sort of breathe through it and connect with ourselves to understand what messages are coming through, so that we can transmute and transform the challenges and difficulties. So paying attention to life experience and journey had a lot to do with learning how to just kind of heal myself, self-heal in the face of, physical adversities. I refuse to go to doctors, and I always like to take it upon myself to just kind of figure things out and go on that greater kind of soul quest. So if something physical showed up or a physical ailment showed up, understanding it and learning from it in a way that brought me closer to my soul instead of giving it over to the medical industry to solve it for me. So I kind of took on that challenge. It wasn't always easy, but I learned a lot. And so in light of that, a lot of downloads came through. So yeah, paying attention to the soul journey, realizing miracles and how energy and frequency works was a big one. Just going on crazy adventures, living out of my vehicle, being, in the wilderness for years, and just like giving myself the time and space to kind of get away from the matrix and all those kind of energies, to just, be in nature, to be able to hear my own thoughts, my own intuition, and just really connect, with the earth. And I was prepared, since childhood for this, greater mission and understanding things about the planetary consciousness and what this particular window period is about. And that's been my focus and attention since I was a little kid. And I was being prepared for this particular window period. And so along the way, kind of synchronistically, I ended up at a clairvoyant institute. It wasn't really my plan. I was going to go to an herbal school, but they didn't have enough applicants. And I ended up bumping into people that introduced me to this clairvoyant institute. I worked a lot of energy for a couple of years, and that's when I started to do clairvoyant readings. I don't really do readings anymore, and I know Neil brought that up. So, if people are like, oh my gosh, I want a reading, I'm not able to do much right now because I'm about to hit the road, but in the future, like I want to open that space up again. And I work with Tarot, and I'm going to do a galactic heritage reading today to kind of see where we are on the timeline. So yeah, lots of realizations and epiphanies along the way, just self-education, like what's coming through, what is my intuition telling me, what am I learning? So I just feel like, yeah, I've been kind of my own self-teacher and just kind of following a certain curiosity that brought me to subjects that you don't learn in the school systems, like galactic history. The I Ching was something that I worked with throughout high school, and just, astrology and just things that you're just not going to have in like third period class. Like it's not on your schedule. It's not something that's being offered. And also the lost pieces of history, the things that have not been disclosed, the hidden truths, particularly surrounding like World War II and the Eisenhower administration. And of course, I feel a strong calling to figure that out, being born into the Eisenhower family. It's like, why was I born into this family? Well, it sort of made sense pretty early on that it had to do with disclosure and bringing things to light that haven't really been, exposed to understand the deeper layers of the military industrial complex. And what does that really mean? And so all these little clues have been dropped, but okay, now it's time to really open up the lid and expose as much as possible. So wilderness background, just research, lots of research, and paying attention to whistleblower testimony, working with a lot of different clients. I've learned so much from people, their abduction experiences, or those that have survived things like MK Ultra or satanic ritual abuse, and, seeing it like a lot more up close and personal. And I think a lot of people that throw out the term, oh, that's just conspiracy theory, or that's QAnon bullshit. It's like, no. This is a lifelong mission and understanding that this stuff is real and it exists. When I was recruited to go off planet and I was up against, possibly being taken to Mars, I was really able to up close and personal see what's going on in the shadow government and things related to ET and government treaties, and really got to the bottom of some things that you just don't hear about just searching the internet. There's so much more that we have to dig into. And that comes along with meeting people that have kind of been there, experienced it, or have that kind of hidden knowledge, whether they are a part of projects or programs, or were in these family lines, or had like the direct experience, that brings a reality to things where you can't dispute it, especially, people's, stories. And victims and people that have gone through this kind of stuff have spoken, and it's just amazing how much people still brush the stuff off as not really being legitimate or real, when books have been written and people have been brave enough to come out with their stories, and it's largely been not heard. And so I try and bring as much attention to them and who they are and what they've been through, so that we can gain a greater understanding of what we're up against. Cosmic mythology studies, galactic and medical astrology, Keylontic science, which Ashiana DN gave us a lot of resources to. And then Ascension Glossary, Lisa Renee, and her website, energeticsynthesis.com. When I came across her information, I just had constant goosebumps, and it was so in alignment with the things that were coming through to me my whole life and the downloads that I was getting, and the things that I had written, which I will soon publish in a book that very much is about this much, much larger picture. And so some of the terminologies and some of the things I share are related to things like heliotic science and things from Ascension Glossary and Lisa Renee to bring more form to the things that I know are truth. And so some of these terminologies can go over people's head, but because you have a replay, you can always kind of pause on the slide and look up a particular terminology and just Google Ascension Glossary and put in the term and, kind of go on an adventure and, maybe fill in some gaps that maybe I won't be able to fully cover in this presentation. Okay, so yes. So I'm going to kind of start here. I'm not going to go majorly into galactic history. I really want to talk about like the here and now and what we're up against and how to best deal with these times and utilize the energies that are available for us to integrate so that we can advance ourselves as humans and break the attachments, whether unconscious or conscious, to the things that are constantly being thrown at us, whether that's propaganda, false narratives, psychological operations, belief systems, distortions, frequency modulations, and things that just throw us off. How can we like sit there in the face of it and actually advance ourselves instead of have it weaken us? Because anytime adversity strikes, we have one of two choices. We can either let it bring us closer to ourselves and help to advance us, or we can be victimized by it and weakened by it to the point where we are no longer functioning from our higher awareness or intuition. We're letting something else run the show. And we're breaking that. This is what this time is all about, the Great Awakening. Where are we allowing ourselves to feed into this matrix? Because if we feed into it too much, we're actually enabling an artificial timeline and a reality that we don't need to participate in. So we really want to get in touch with what the true organic ascension reality is about and what's truly going on a cosmic and earthly level so that we can appreciate it and work with it from the inside out and outside in, based in what's truly real instead of this imposed system and artificial overlay that actually is way more than just mind control and social engineering. It goes into the different types of dark weaponry that was put in the planetary grid network to create reversals and to create just a world that we're born into that through osmosis, we kind of pick up on, this reversal coding and the manipulation of Stargate energy. And I'm not going to go too deep into that, but I will just kind of touch upon it. This world was once far less dense than it is today. And when we were dealing with galactic wars, cataclysms, and the collapse of the higher dimensional civilizations caused by exploding planets, everything rapidly changed. We were dealing with abuses of free will, hybridization, the manipulation of incarnate consciousness, and the manipulation of our DNA. So, starting off in the Lyra system, in a free will universe, you got your guardian founder races, you've got like the Elohim and the Seraphim, and you got your fallen angels, you got the Luciferian kind of rebellion. But that can all get so complicated to try and figure out. But if we look at it as DNA architecture and that all these different things are parts of ourselves that have kind of splintered and fragmented apart, we can begin to look at the different archetypes and the different aspects to invite it to come back into integration so that we can become whole and rebuild the DNA architecture. So all these exploded planets or hybridization or the manipulation of consciousness and how some of these tactics disconnected us from true source energy with lower creator gods kind of holding this veil over us. We can look at it within ourselves when we check in with our own energy systems and ask ourselves, is our ego dominating? Is our wounded pain body dominating? Is there a belief system that we're holding on to that is kind of keeping us from being sovereign or connecting with our own truth frequency? And usually we don't really realize it until a crisis shows up, maybe a physical illness, or some, kind of breakdown or some sort of acknowledgement that a person doesn't feel seen or doesn't really feel like they fit in. And, it's okay, these are all arrows pointing towards, okay, let's reassess this. Let's look at this and give ourselves enough credit and respect to say, where do I need to change? Where do I need to release something or transmute something or transcend something so that we feel, aligned. And once we feel aligned, we recognize the things that don't really serve us, and we can begin to let go of draining influences and things that just kind of make us miserable. And we make room for synchronicities to support us finding things like soul family and soulmates. And so we don't have to compromise ever. We just have to be willing to take risks and have the courage to just stand strong in who we, truly are by just giving ourselves permission to just be ourselves, because that's where all the magic happens. Is just saying, I love myself enough to give myself the full experience of feeling into the emotionality, feeling into the triggers, feeling into all of it, so that we don't project upon ourselves that something's wrong with us. And instead we look at it like something's trying to get my attention, and I'm gonna like initiate through this and understand it more, rather than maybe go on a pharmaceutical drug or mask the symptoms through just putting a Band-Aid on it or distracting ourselves away from it. And that's the real, purpose here. We're here for spiritual and soul development. We're not here to, fit into some status or some model or some expectation that society holds, which is obviously different culture to culture, and throughout, the world, there's, different maybe traditions or things that are passed down. But as we're seeing in the United States since 1947, the level of infiltration and indoctrination, even in the school systems and universities, and just coming from the political realms and the entertainment industries, it has really, really created a human persona of subpersonalities that are basically products of the system. And, people either do a real great job at fitting into that, or they can't play the game. And it's not like it's all programming and it's all negative, but very often we're held hostage by certain stigmas or certain insecurities that relate to self-worth, or a false sense of self-worth based on who we think we should be versus who we truly are, because of, some of these agendas and programs. So even a really awakened person can struggle with this because of, the misunderstandings or the projections, or the targeting that, takes place in the school systems, where the starseed missions and those that are really thinking outside of the box aren't really given any proper attention, or they kind of just get dismissed. Or it's like, as I've talked about, and I think a lot of people can relate, you just maybe get slapped a label of ADD, or, doesn't sit still in class, has a terrible attendance, and therefore, okay, you're an F sort of failure kind of thing. And so we're recovering from a lot of this stuff that, even if we're awakened to, can kind of have a grip on us, because it starts so young. And we have amnesia, we're given our biological parents, and we're thrown into a system that doesn't appreciate the larger picture of our greater galactic history and what's truly possible in the integration of spirituality and science. We're learning dead sciences. We're learning histories that are not fully accurate to what truly took place. And it's a lot to break through and break free from. So anyway, because of all these different events that took place in this free will universe, it has made it so much more difficult to maintain a multidimensional embodiment and a connection to spirit, because of all that has taken place in our galactic history and while in physical form. In this profound window period, we had the opportunity to return to these higher planes of existence. And it's a process. It's a process, and I'm going to get into that. Everybody's familiar with the term dark night of the soul. There's some very, very uncomfortable places that we need to go through to, upgrade. And that's part of the transformation, process, is to move through these, different levels in order to gain, greater awareness, to bring mindfulness and conscious awareness to the things that may have previously been unconscious. When we shine a light on unconscious energy, we recognize that we're multidimensional. We have a creative imagination, and we don't want it to be infected by, things that cause us to live in a limited sort of way. So currently, planet Earth's inhabitants are undergoing a war over timelines. The invading forces of the negative alien agenda use the artificial tree of life as a manifestation grid. Trigger events to hook us into false solutions is a constant. False flag operations, psychological operations, to kind of like keep us hooked into sort of like a trauma loop, or just kind of being in survival, or, you know, not being able to let go of the news or what's kind of going on, and just like, you know, experiencing reality from the outside in instead of the inside out, where we're just constantly reacting. And they've done a really great job at hooking people into the point where we expect somebody to just kind of like lead us out of it, or save the day, when the Great Awakening to me is all about recognizing that that power exists within. No matter what kind of adversity we're dealing with, spirit holds dominion over physical matter. And it's our job to stay as connected as possible when everything is trying to do the opposite and plug you into something that is basically a false light parasitic vampiric system of control that is leading people to greater enslavement. And this is not new news to any of us, but here we are. And it's like, we're waking up to it every day. And it's like, sometimes it just feels like, you know, this can't be reversed, or it's just getting worse and worse and worse. But I mean, if we look at our own lives and the kind of adversities and struggles that we go through just in navigating the human experience, whether we're getting out of a narcissistic relationship, whether we're breaking a addiction or a habit, or facing some level of imprisonment or isolation, the power of the mind and what it's capable of doing when it connects to the creative imagination and different frequencies that shift our perspective, we start to access a miracle vibration, and the physical world responds to that shift in the way we, you know, relate to reality. I mean, everything's a relationship. We're in relationship with creation. We're in relationship with everything that we interact with. And creating upgrades is to improve those relationships, to create greater harmony. And yeah, just like paying attention. So lots of dark technologies are used to make that very, very difficult. And it's really amped up right now. I know everybody's dealing with just all sorts of difficult situations. People's jobs and livelihoods are being compromised. Families and friends are starting to break apart because people aren't seeing eye to eye or responding in a similar way. But I just hope that we can all just hold a love vibration, have our boundaries intact, but just hold a love vibration, no matter how different our reactions are, that love wins instead of this divide and conquer, because that's the ultimate goal. And the weapons and all these different tactics are geared towards that. So if we can keep our attention on what they're trying to break up and what they're trying to target, then all the weapons and all the assaults and all the different things that they're using to create this separation nullifies and becomes neutralized. It's no longer a weapon anymore. It becomes neutralized because what they're attempting to truly target, they can't have, because we're committed and devoted to holding that sacred flame and holding that frequency connection to a greater universal love energy, which is part of the global alchemy that's underway, is to maintain that, so that we can, you know, turn things around and not fall into the pit of what their goal is, which is to gain, you know, ultimate control because of the fractures, not just within ourselves, but amongst each other. So obviously it's important to have boundaries, but I think the greatest leadership in the world today is just holding love and trust in yourself and trust in spirit and dropping the fear of death. We have died so many times. And in a sense, you know, these kind of times are going to put us into a bit of a life review. I think we all kind of are preparing ourselves for the what ifs. And so instead of fearing death, let's embrace the love of freedom and do the work necessary for us to feel like we can face the creator and face our souls and face the unknowns with confidence that we've cleared enough of the negative patternings in our life to feel safe no matter what happens. So anyway, all these different things are to create fear. It infects our creative channels. And once our creative channels are infected, we are generating these storylines that are kind of like hijack storylines related to artificial timelines and kind of sub-realities based in holding a sub-personality that isn't operating in total fullness and wholeness. It's a lower chakra kind of thing. Instead of, you know, having that doorway open to being like, okay, if adversity is striking, I better find my treasures to help turn this around, versus just being in a panic. So when panic strikes, when anxiety strikes, when trauma strikes, or self-doubt or any kind of fear, it's like, this is a doorway, this is an opportunity to open up to something that can begin to pour in to change the trajectory, to bring us closer to ourselves. And I know I'm kind of redundant in saying that, but like literally, these are the choices that are in front of us. Does adversity bring us closer to ourselves, or does it make us more fragmented, more undone, to the point where we just have somebody else, you know, kind of solve these things for us? And so that's why we are our own saviors, because these challenges are here for us to grow and turn it around. And the adversities in my life have been the greatest blessings, because the challenges help me to see, okay, here's where my true strength lies. Here's where I can connect with a miracle vibration instead of a self-projection about what it looks like or what it might seem to be, to the point of allowing my own creative energy to be infected by just confusion and bewilderment, which makes us very vulnerable to predatory influences and archonic attack. So we're spiritual athletes. When we see obstacles, we need to learn to leap over them instead of continually hit our head on the obstacles and feel a sense of defeat or hopelessness. These obstacles are here to build spiritual muscle and kick some serious ass. And that level of leadership is what is going to activate others who are having a hard time. And it's very contagious. You know, you might notice that people are magnetized towards you, or feel in need of like your wisdom or guidance, or they feel a sense of safety because you're holding compassion and you're holding, you know, a love vibe. So you can look at all the challenges that you were born into, or the things that you feel maybe have been a huge struggle, and see it as a part of your greater mission. You took on this challenge for a reason, so that you could rise above it to assist others that might not have such an easy time. And then we help to, you know, activate each other. We're not solving problems for others. We're reminding each other of the great strength that lies within. And so igniting empowerment and sovereignty in others is a lot better than the old paradigm model of follow me, I've got all the answers, you know, and creating some kind of dependency where, you know, a person stays in sort of a weakened place and never really kind of like, you know, becomes the fullness of all that they're capable of being. And I think this is what the Starseed missions are all about, is being activators and living by example and walking the talk. So in the face of adversity, we can get closer to ourselves instead of hand that power over to others. And so a lot of events took place in our galactic history to bring us to where we are today. And I'm not going to go too much into the greater galactic history, but we're healing our damaged DNA. And when we take that challenge upon ourselves, we're actually healing thousands of years of imbalance that has turned into health issues and conditions, and just like what we consider to be just maybe part of the human experience, which it is. But you know, isn't it our challenge to like heal our DNA and to explore the parts of our brain that we're not using, and to understand things like junk DNA? Like, what is that? Isn't there so much more to us than a huge portion of our being junk? And if we're only functioning at like 2, 3 strands, 4 strands of DNA, and we know that there's way more, and they're calling the rest junk, well, there's a hidden treasure there. There's a hidden history there. Our greater spiritual abilities and all these different things that can absolutely crush these dark and nefarious forces, and all these attempts to like control our minds. And that's why AI can only really infiltrate lower frequency. And that's why they try and keep us in that. If it was enough to just blast us with weapons, they wouldn't bother with all the fake media all the different things that stream through, Hollywood. I mean, we know, or a lot of us know, that a lot of politicians and a lot of celebrities and a lot of people in powerful positions are dealing with alters, or there's, Manchurian candidates or sleeper agents, or people that are programmed to play a particular role in order to influence the masses, to gain sort of a level of trust, to then all of a sudden ensnarl the consciousness of the individual. And there are a lot of people that are breaking through the programming. I've been in touch with somebody who used to be a trained assassin, has killed so many, and was mind controlled to do so, and was actually targeting light workers, and has since broken through the programming and has discovered, the real and true origins on a star system kind of level. And if some of these individuals can break through the programming, there's nothing we can't do. I mean, if you look at people like Kathy O'Brien and her story, she's just embodying love. She's overcome some of the most unbelievable manipulation and control, and she beams love. So these are the great leaders and examples, showing us that there's nothing that we can't overcome. We have the ability to overcome some of the most severe attacks. And so as we are under this next level of assault and manipulation, we have to remember that we have that greater strength. And it's the power of spirit, and it's something else. It's really something else to be here. I'm just a little tongue-tied. I'm just like, I mean, I've been kind of preparing for all this, kind of calling out a lot of this, but it's one thing to warn somebody that a flood's coming and then all of a sudden be rowing your boat in the stormy waters when it arrives. And I do feel pretty well prepared, but it's a lot. It's a lot for all of us, no matter how aware we are, no matter how much we know. It is a lot right now. And the great thing is that we have each other. We need to build community. We need to pay attention to the things that need to be healed within ourselves, and where community is being attacked, so that we can overcome everything that tends to break up community, whether that be a person that's playing a guru role, or somebody who is a plant that is infiltrating community, or some of the lower energies connected to maybe gossip or smearing or backstabbing. These are the lessons that we're here to learn. This is the greater priority, is that we can hold space for each other, and we can pay attention to how we can repair it and heal it and take it to the next level through compassion, forgiveness, and a bit of transparency. Knowing that, okay, we all have traumas, we all have stuff to deal with. Let's have a greater conversation and go deeper, so that these patternings don't continue. Because when these patternings continue, the sabotage is always there. And so when something's about to come to fruition or birth itself, all of a sudden there's a miscarriage, or it just gets hijacked. And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, here we go again. So I know you guys kind of know what I mean. Anyway, artificial intelligence systems have been designed and weaponized, specialized for emotional and ultimately spiritual harassment. This is so that the emotional and spiritual energies get lowered to the level that a machine can entrain, follow, mimic, match, record, modify, and replicate that energetic blueprint. If our consciousness is above this and not in the programming, we aren't as impacted. So in the face of something that's targeting or attacking, or when we feel kind of dragged into something that, is pulling us into a lower aspect of ourselves, we need to stop and take a breath and reset, and not allow ourselves to, go too far down that road. And so it's very important, in our everyday, that we're very, very mindful of where our energies are going, and work on the, daily, kind of maintenance in this sort of way. Because once we're kind of locked into a trigger, once we're sort of in this kind of lower, energetic of fear, victimhood, anxiety, the artificial intelligence has the capacity to sort of kind of haunt us and create situations around us that amplify this, if that makes sense. So AI can't function in the frequency of love, enlightenment, or wisdom. It can't mimic that. The vibration is too high. So the greater agenda is, how do we get people down into the lower frequencies, so that the soul matrix is no longer attached to the physical body, and the physical body is just literally just doing whatever it's told. So I know, when people feel a certain trauma and there's a certain trigger, it can like grow and expand to the point of like almost overtaking a person. And so just got to be mindful of those times, and be as real as possible with the people around you, maybe saying, hey, this energy is like hitting me and I'm not seeing things very clearly. And I'm maybe seeing you as somebody, dangerous, because it reminds me of something in my past. It's like, let's go deeper with each other and be more transparent, because very often people just act out, or project, and relationships get really toxic and sour, and they don't need to be. If there's really true love and a soul connection, there's all the time in the world to be able to process through, breathe through, and work out this stuff, because we're healing ancestral patterns. We're deprogramming. We're changing the nature of how we relate to ourselves and each other by recognizing the different programmings and the different manipulations that has made it very, very hard to have harmony and have depth and meaning in our relationships and connections and friendships and community environments. And very much it has to do with media. Media has an important role in spinning disinformation and targeting humanity in a mass mind control operation. It is directed psychological and emotional operations that are used against the public. It intends to incite people into violence and tell you how to think. It is used to derail important facts and cover up the news we need to hear in order to distract us and hook us in. I mean, this is what all last year and the year before has really been about. I mean, it's been like this for a really, really long time. Now it's like super in our face. I mean, the level of division is unreal right now between the anti this and the pro this and the right and the left and the, here are the conspiracy theory people, and here are those that like really believe in the leftist agenda and think that our governments really care. I mean, I'm kind of shocked at how many people are like kind of like falling for it. But I mean, this is an absolutely unbelievable psychological and emotional operation used against us to really just create division again, to create division. Cosmic and natural law are encoded with our ability to create alchemy and transformation and mass healing. They constantly seek to fracture us because they thrive on the negative energy. And, this is the most important thing to just be wary of, no matter what. And I know we're all kind of gathered in a very, similar sort of vibration, that we recognize this. It's like, what the heck is going on? And when you think of just like it down to just the level of what's happening in the school systems with them wanting to push critical race theory, and of course, like the masking and just everything that's coming down the pike is all just a major act of psychological warfare to the point of totally energetic harvesting, like harvesting our life force. So like in 1950, I bet in 70 years, we will have flying cars. I mean, I love this meme, Do you remember growing up as a kid and you thought about the year 2000 and beyond? It was like, aren't there going to be these great technologies, floating cities, and, just this more advanced world? And look at what we have in 2021. They're calling bottles of syrup racist, or like the Land O'Lakes lady, like there's a problem there, or Dr. Seuss. And meanwhile, pedophilia, child trafficking, human trafficking, and all these sort of things are going on. And they managed to just like hook people into this outrage and this sort of false woke scenario where people think, oh, I'm an awakened person because we're restructuring society out of some sort of like racist ideology or mentality. And we're rewriting the scripts so that it's a lot more politically correct. But, this is all imposed on us so that we have a reason to bitch at each other and to feel offended and triggered, and like to the point where you can't even have a conversation with some people without it being like, wow, that's so racist, or it's just unbelievable. And a lot of people aren't falling for it. So the next level of this agenda is, okay, well, How about medical tyranny? How about dividing people based in their belief systems about health and well-being? You know, if people aren't outraged about censorship, there's something seriously wrong. If people are more concerned about a bottle of syrup and the picture on the bottle, or you know, some sort of victim mentality or consciousness, and we're not looking at the larger picture of what we're really here to protect and rescue, you know, as far as like the innocence and, you know, children. And, you know, we really lost our heads. And I'm not saying that anybody here has got that problem, but, you know, it's really alarming to witness. We got bigger fish to fry, as we know. So we're not advancing in the way that I think some of us might have expected, but that reality is still very much here and very much alive. Question is, can we be in alignment with it? Can we access it? Can we live in that more true and organic world so that we can thrive and unfold into our greatness and advance ourselves instead of get caught up in these dramas and conflicts and arguments that really get us nowhere? So for decades, people have been putting out information, trying to help in this great awakening, and not everybody obviously is on board. So we just have to just take it upon ourselves to check ourselves and our frequency. And I think some of the most important aspects of this process is to just be as self-honest as possible and to do our best to pull ourselves out of the lower energies when we find ourselves kind of falling into the pit of it. And if you look at, you know, this particular slide, the lower vibrations of energy are connected to things like shame, guilt, apathy, grief, fear, desire, anger, pride. And then when we begin to raise our frequency, the doorway into doing that is having courage to be true to yourself. I mean, that right now is like the greatest act of bravery, is to just say, wait a second, I'm just going to be true to myself. And being true to oneself might mean that we have to visit some of these emotions and we have to reflect on the past and maybe face our fears or look at why we feel guilty, but give it an honest assessment so that we can breathe unconditional love into it, forgive ourselves, and, you know, cleanse, purify. So it's not like, you know, oh, if guilt and apathy shows up, oh, get away from it as fast as possible, you're in a low energy. No, engage with it, give it love, give it attention. It's like a neglected child. You know, it just wants to be heard. Why are you apathetic? Why are you in grief? Why is there guilt? Why is there shame? And to like really look at it and give it the time and energy it deserves so that it can turn around. It's like, okay, there might be something you're holding on to in your past. It might be something you wish you didn't do or something you wish you did better. Well, you know, it's healthy to explore that and give it love instead of denial, instead of ignoring it, instead of trying to put on a happy face or push yourself to be positive, that we know isn't possible. It can't be maintained without crashing. You know, so any kind of like false sort of happiness that's based in denial is ultimately going to crash because it's not really genuine. When we reach a state of joy, bliss, and contentment that's genuine, very often it's because we've explored the vibrations and frequencies of shame, guilt, apathy, grief, fear, you know, and I would say desire, maybe that, you know, has to do with like where the ego is just kind of like me, and not thinking about the impact it might have on others. You know, anger is not a negative thing. None of these things are really negative, but there's a flip side to it. On the other side of anger, there's passion. On the other side of desire, there can also be kind of like desire that is based in integrity. You know, like I have the desire to create a healing center because I want to create something of, you know, value. But some people are like, you know, I just desire to have a lot of money and I don't care who I screw over to get it, right? So we're kind of getting over the 7 deadly sins to find the 7 greater virtues to create this transformation. But we have to go into the dark and the mucky in order to do it. You can't just deny it. So you got to feel it to heal it. And I think that's just where it's at. And so just the way that society and culture is set up doesn't give us a lot of time to do this kind of energy work. You know, if you have to go to a job and you work 40 hours a week, or you're working 2 jobs, you're trying to take care of your kids and you're just trying to just get by and put food on the table and put a roof over your head, there's not a whole lot of time to work through this stuff. And that's why we're dealing with a culture and society of people that are masking these energies and emotions with pharmaceutical drugs or just anything to just feel better. And so instead of initiating and breathing through this and transforming it, we end up carrying labels that undermine us and make us think that there's something wrong with us, when actually being able to feel into all these things is what's right. Because we're all human. We're going to feel these negative emotions. We're going to dip down into these lower frequencies. Well, instead of masking it, instead of denying it, instead of putting a Band-Aid on it, let's explore it. And let's not be afraid of it. You know, don't be afraid of the dark. And this is the whole concept of the dark night of the soul, when it's like, okay, so let's give ourselves the space. And how do we give ourselves the space? Well, sometimes it means maybe just hitting the road, maybe just going camping, letting go of some of the attachments or the belief systems of what we think we need to survive, when we can really, you know, let go of some of that and begin to thrive based in knowing that we're naturally abundant. Spirit holds dominion over physical matter. We can work closely with the earth and generate abundance without this outside currency and this outside system of approval or disapproval. You know, we're either outcasts or we're playing the game correctly. And these are times where people are reaching a breaking point of which direction they're going to go. And as people are being manipulated through fear, there's two places a person can go with that. Having somebody else hopefully solve it for us, or moving up the ladder, finding, you know, the courage, the neutrality, the willingness, the acceptance, the reason, love, joy, peace, enlightenment, to be a creative and engaged person, to write a better script than the one that they're giving, to make sure that our creative channels are in touch with our greater creative imagination, to access our dreams, our visions, our mission, our calling, and our greater strength to overcome these obstacles that like to keep us in these lower vibrations. So there's nothing wrong with these lower energies, as long as we don't remain stuck in it to the point where something external needs to run the show. And that's what we're waking up to, is what it means to truly be sovereign. And when we find personal sovereignty, we can then really step into unity consciousness, because we're representing ourselves on an authentic level. And we can just relate to each other more, because we understand the full spectrum of frequency, instead of the false light sense of enlightenment, where, you know, a lot of the new age deceptions kind of pull a person into of, you know, just love and light it away, you know, or that's fear porn, or let's not go there. Yeah, we don't want to go into fear without solutions. But the thing is, anytime something's adverse or something's really, really dark, that's a temporary state of being. And that's what's really interesting about the planet Pluto, because it's death, rebirth, alchemy, transformation. So there's going to be a death part. There's going to be sort of that free fall of just feeling like the loss or the grief or the confusion. But it's like nature shows us, cyclical. It brings us back up. And then we stabilize in a certain level of stability and wholeness that provides us a root system, and also the branches to open up to the spirit realms and our creative imagination. And this is what we're working on healing, is the artificial tree of life grid system that was overlaid on the planetary grid network has impacted our own DNA. And so we're restoring our DNA to the true 12 strand and beyond, which is restoring the tree of life. So the grid network has been absolutely manipulated in the same way our DNA has been. So when we do the inner work, when we begin to advance ourselves and understand that the earth is in the process of doing that in this ascension window period, we are on board with the cosmic and earthly events that are happening that need to take place within, because it's happening. Ascension is not just some fluffy, nice idea. Oh, what happened to ascension? Is that even a real concept? Absolutely it is. But it's not going to really work if we're distracted over here. So we got to train ourselves to not get too distracted and to just be like, wait a second, that's over there. It's vampiric. It's siphoning my life force. It's draining me. It's stressing me out. Let's get back to center. And let's start to, you know, look at what is possible, what resources we have within, and how we also, you know, need to be prepared for what's to come, but not from the vibration of fear, but just, you know, preparation. If we go out on a boat, we're going to bring a life jacket. Does it mean we're going to drown? No. Are we creating fear that we might drown? No, we're prepared just in case. So we can do it, you know, with grace and ease, but just be, you know, prepared, and be prepared also to get downloads from your higher guidance that's going to direct you and help you to be where you need to be. And the distractions make that very hard. When the survival chakra is all lit up and the anxiety begins to take over, you can't think clearly. And it's just like, and this is kind of the hysteria that's going on, is that, you know, people aren't thinking clearly. So they're kind of creating a quick fix. Okay, fine, I'll take the jab. Okay, fine, I don't want to lose my job. The survival energy that gets like so amplified is just grabbing at anything, just, you know, to not feel kind of threatened. But, you know, the system doesn't own you. Allow that threat to set you free instead of enslave you. So that kind of adversity, you know, maybe the loss of a job, maybe a breakup, maybe the need to move because you're not in a location that you feel good about. Yeah, it might feel like a crisis, but it's an initiation into liberation, so that you're not compromising yourself. There's no reason to ever compromise yourself. So epigenetics, science is proving that our body's ability to heal and repair itself is greatly affected by our beliefs, thoughts, and emotions and intentions, for they have a profound vibrational effect upon our continually evolving genetic code. We're the programmers of the code. DNA activation is our software upgrade. Okay, so if we're able to heal based on our beliefs, thoughts, emotions, and intentions, then what do we have to worry about? Why is everybody freaking out? Well, because this isn't the kind of science that we learned in our science classes. This isn't the kind of stuff that they're going to broadcast on the news. They're still wanting us to be oblivious to this kind of phenomenon by manipulating our belief systems, our thoughts and emotions, dragging it down to these lower energies, divide and conquer, fear, and what is that doing? It makes us enablers of a timeline that we don't want to see. And that's the infection of the creative energies. And that is the biggest target, the mind. Because once the mind, the brain computer, holds a certain belief and thought form, the creative energy and what we manifest is going to follow. So if we can just say, wait a second, that doesn't resonate, that doesn't feel right, that doesn't feel good, this does. My belief in myself, my belief in the power of spirit. And it goes beyond beliefs. It starts to go into truth, and it's a truth frequency. It goes into a knowingness. And to get to the truth frequency, we have to be true to ourselves. And when we're true to ourselves, it doesn't matter if people like it or don't like it. They don't really belong in your world if they don't like it. So sometimes being true to ourselves means, okay, I feel like crap, I'm depressed, and I'm going to acknowledge that and be honest with myself and understand it. Because very often when we sink down into those lower emotions, they have incredible messages. It wouldn't be showing up unless it had a message. Same thing with pain or any physical symptom we have. It's there for a reason and needs to be heard. So sometimes depression is like a greater soul longing that we don't feel is getting appeased, or exhausted anger, or just feeling a sense of hopelessness. So, okay, take some time with ourselves and explore it. Give it life. Create a poem, make some music, do a painting, give it life, because it has a message, just like anxiety. You know, sometimes it's a download wanting to come in that we're blocking. And so the body, you know, gets all tense. The nervous system gets all amped up and feels all anxious. But then if we give ourselves the time and space, we can breathe into that and be like, okay, well, all of a sudden, a major download or realization or epiphany is lighting up. And it's just like, wow, it didn't come from a book. It didn't come from the TV. It didn't come from something external. It's something that you held space to connect with that holds an important message. Maybe it's a warning. Maybe it's a breakthrough. So we want to take all these negatives and give it life and not project that it's necessarily a negative, because there's always another side to the coin. So it's just like, okay, what's on the other side of anger? Maybe the passion to see justice take place in the world. So let's take that anger and that fire energy and channel it into being more solution orientated, so that we can just not have it like destroy us and eat us alive. So also our emotions and intentions. So beliefs, thoughts, emotions, and intentions. If we focus on these things every day, we will direct our DNA upgrade. And it involves checking ourselves constantly to make sure that whatever thoughts, emotions, and intentions we hold are absolutely in alignment to what we'd like to see unfold. And anytime that something feels off and we don't want it in our system, we do something about it. And I say this a lot kind of redundantly, but when we see a physical space around us, we can tell when the kitchen's messy, when the bathroom needs cleaning. We can tell when something's unorganized or chaotic. We can see it with our eyes. And so it's obvious, okay, well, we can do something about it. We can clean it up so that we can live healthy and hygienically and be able to cook the next meal. Well, what about our emotions, our thoughts, and our beliefs? Does that need purification? Does that need wisdom? Does that need clarity? Does that need reassessment so that we make room for a positive flow coming in from our higher awareness? And so when we take the time to do this, our higher awareness begins to come into our physical realm. It becomes grounded. It begins to inform our root chakra. What needs to take place for us to be embodied so that we're manifesting from our higher self instead of our ego, our fears, our anxieties, and our reactions. And so, obviously meditation is important, but, the tool of writing, the tool of self-discovery through creativity and writing, I feel is incredibly important in these times, especially in times of great adversity like we're dealing with in our personal lives and on a global level. Let's make sure that we're bringing in a greater script than the one that they're giving us, and be very careful of your thoughts, emotions, and intentions being hijacked, because we have the capability of upgrading our DNA right now and becoming the override frequency to all of this. And so we have to understand that DNA activation is our software upgrade, and we are the programmers of the code. And it all starts with the brain computer that is constantly being targeted with social engineering agendas, mind control, archonic forces that skew our perceptions and put us into a delusional state where our creative energy is basically like lost in it's almost like it's haunted, So if our creative imagination puts us in touch with the greater possibilities to be able to do what might seem to be impossible, to bring in a miracle energy, to connect into higher dimensions, if our creative imagination gives us access to that, to then bring into the physical plane to manifest from these higher dimensions, then if we're in a haunted sort of perception where our creative imagination is haunted by the what ifs and all the fears and all the, the things that put us in a panic and put us in survival, then it's like we're like stuck in a spider web, and it just gets worse. Our astral space gets terrible. We have bad dreams. We're just kind of working out all this stuff. So got to just take a breath in the moment and say, wait a second, let me just, kind of reset. We have a creative imagination. What can we bring in to change the nature of how we're living in reality? Where is it being infected? Where is it being overrun by vampiric, dark, energies? So I know you guys know what I mean. So the seedings of the root races on this planet have been to reassemble the original DNA and reclaim that which was lost in the Lyran Wars with the Orion group. The 12-tree grid was designed to help reassemble the original avatar DNA of the human being in the lower harmonic universes and reclaim all aspects back into wholeness. So the 12-tree grid is the true planetary grid network. And that is the true blueprint of our DNA, 12-strand and beyond. So the planetary grid network and our DNA are very much a replica of each other, just as our chakra system is a replica of the multidimensional world that we're in. We've been functioning in a 7-chakra system, but we have way more chakras than that. And so every time we start to move beyond the 7-chakra system, that's when psychic attack really ramps up, so that we don't move into this greater level of advancement. And the psychological operations and targetings are very tricky because they really play on our self-esteem. And when you feel like you're progressing on your spiritual path, and then all of a sudden you feel attacked, a person can often feel defeated. I'm doing something wrong. Because maybe you thought, if you start meditating and changing your diet and, that is all it's going to be fluffy and easy. No, we have to move through a lot of gatekeepers. As we advance ourselves, the attack ramps up, but in the face of that attack is where we gain the strength to move to the next challenge and the next level and the next layer, to the point where it loses its grip. And it just doesn't have anything on us anymore. And that's spiritual immunity. We go through all these challenges and adversities to gain spiritual immunity and to become senior to these lower forces. But we can't get there without going through the different stages and gateways. And ultimately, that is a gift. Adversity is a blessing. So during the Atlantean cataclysm, about 26,000 to 30,000 years ago, this is when the planetary stargates, the planetary grids, and ley lines became controlled by the negative alien agenda races, such as the reptilians, the Anunnaki, the Nephilim, the Alpha Draconis, Orion group, Zetas, Greys, and some Nordics. So, talking about the 12-tree grid system, well, that's what was initially established. But during this time, during the Atlantean cataclysm, and then the explosion of Maldek, and this is a later stage of the greater galactic history that I usually go into, like Tiamat and Tara and the Lyran system and the Orion Wars, but no need to go into all that. But this particular time in Earth history, after we sunk down into this lower harmonic universe, the Atlantean cataclysm was when this artificial tree of life template ended up overlaying the planetary grid network. So mass biological and mind control devices exist well beyond the technology of implanting tiny physical chips into humans, which accompanied many of the abductions by the Greys and non-benevolent Zetas, and are also an impending application of such electronic devices by the one world government to the population. Even brain signatures radiated by government HARP and Gwen towers are relatively superficial compared with ancient existing global grid systems, which can be used for manipulating the evolution of all of life on the planet, including the planet's evolution itself. So here's the whole idea of just like this hijacked, this invasion that's already taken place. I mean, we've been dealing with this for such a long time that, people are just getting warmed up to the concept of there even being ET races and UFOs. But we've been dealing with a manipulated planetary grid network for thousands of years. And it's something that has stepped down from these greater galactic wars. So these fallen entities who have separated themselves from source need us as a food source. And so once we figure out how to no longer be a food source, we become a part of this greater global transformation that's underway. And this is why this time is so significant. The mother energy is anchored back into the planet in a way that was not possible before. And a lot of my presentations go into that greater history of how the mother energy was not able to be anchored in the planetary body because of the cataclysms and all these events that took place. And so the dark mother reversals and the deep state sort of Illuminati 13 families have behind the scenes been the false powers that be. And they don't have any real power. It's all stolen power. It's a vampiric and parasitic. It relies on our energy to hold the power it does in the world because it's no longer, connected to source. Their own DNA is limited to 11-strand, 10-strand potential. And so this is like what they don't want is for us to go beyond the 10 and 11 going into the 12. And I know that just probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Here we are in these physical bodies. Obviously, we're not experiencing the physical potential to embody a 12-strand DNA, but we're gradually working our way into that, where we begin to move from carbon-based to crystalline and the whole concept of like the Merkaba body. So when it comes to like their limited DNA and the 10th and 11th strand, this is a part of the artificial overlay of the planetary grid network to block certain stargates from opening, which keeps us in a prison planet. And I'm sorry if that goes over everybody's head, but hopefully this can explain it a little bit better. AI timeline wars. You got your 12-strand DNA potential, which is the organic timeline. And it's this process of unfolding into the fullness of all that we are by going through these initiations and going through these transformative changes that help us to rebuild this. But AI timelines are connected to the 10D base distortion, the artificial tree of life. And when you hear about grid workers or people going to certain locations on the planet to do energy work, it's to dismantle a lot of these dark technologies and these reversal codes. They even unplugged the grid network in certain areas where the Albion body and the Cathar body were connected. And it was the electric magnetic sacred union ley line points near Glastonbury and also Stonehenge. This is where they put dark technologies as harvesting centers to create sort of dissension instead of ascension. So if you're blocking certain gateways, it's similar to having an energy block in your body. The rest of your organs are going to be affected by whatever energy block is existing. So if you're having an issue with one organ, more than likely it's throwing off something else. You kind of get what I mean, It's like when one thing is kind of hurt or compromised or infected, it's obviously going to impact the rest. So if we're functioning in a 10-strand kind of DNA, draconian DNA, template, we're just locked in this time loop. So the whole goal is to retrieve the 12-strand and beyond. And when we look at the zodiac with it having 12 signs, and we learn about our astro map, we can begin to see the patternings and the harmonious energies that flow. We're given like a map to begin to, recover from all of this. So if there's a challenging aspect, like a squared aspect in your chart, like say you have like Saturn square Pluto, okay, maybe that pattern is going to continue to repeat until you get to the other side of that challenge to then retrieve, these lost aspects. So we're given a 12 signed zodiac that is the gift of how to upgrade our DNA. It gives us very valuable tools to work with. It gives us an incredible education, especially medical astrology. So when we can work with, the zodiac and also understand that the 13th sign is here now, we can get to know ourselves and what these challenges are and how to find the higher octave of those planetary alignments.